Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. We should be going live. Please feel free during the live to leave any comments and say hi so we know that everything is working well. My name is Mary Marutian. I'm the non-native speaker. And we're all here today. Fernando and Edita. Don should be joining us as well. We have a special guest speaker today to discuss a very important topic, which is credentials, competence, and compensation, and ELT standards in general. So we don't want to, we could talk about this all day, but we want to go into the nitty gritty and keep this as short and sweet as possible with as much information we can give you about the topic. So I would like to ask my guests today, starting with Edita, so she'll warm up the audience, and tell us about what qualifies you to speak about today's topic, Edita.
Thank you for throwing the ball at me immediately. I'm a business English trainer slash teacher, and I have a master's degree in languages, as well as a CELTA and many specific credentials for business English teaching. I think I've gathered a very big list of credentials, like a lot of us have in this industry, especially the non-native teachers who are asked to have a bigger stack of papers normally to get certain positions. So this is what brings us here. So that's something to mention.
Okay, thank you for qualifying yourself. Fernando, same question goes to you. What qualifies you to talk about credentials
Well,
competence?
I am sort of an outsider. I read law at university, not English. But in Spain, we have a thing called the School of Languages that at the time it used to be quite strict, 5 years, just no literature, just language and phonetics, which many native speakers failed. And later I took my CELTA, my Delta Module 1, and I have a year of my first year of education. I'm trying to complete it as I work, which is time consuming. But I've been teaching for 23 years now.
Perfect. As we're waiting for Don to join us, I would like to go straight to the point and ask you, Fernando, how do you personally define, as a school owner, what constitutes someone who is qualified? How do you look for teachers and staff?
Um, I would say that to begin with, I would like to give you some real examples from job interviews of what it is not for me a qualified teacher. These are real examples, no names, no name dropping, of course, but many years ago, Britain, a gardener, married to a Spanish native speaker. I'm based in Spain. She wanted to be present in the interview. No teaching experience, no qualification, no tertiary education. And basically, I said, but why would you like to try your hand at teaching? His answer, that can't be that difficult. Just like that. Um, Not only that he thought that, but he actually mouthed it. Next example, a Briton of Spanish descent. I don't want to teach children. I only want to teach adult and conversation classes. And I am an asset because of my RP accent. Well, plot twist, it was not RP, it was a story accent. No shame, no blame on it, but hello. And last example, another Briton of Spanish descent. Um, I'm deeply qualified. I hold a diploma. And now, in Spanish, diploma equals to a bachelor's degree. But she was referring to a British diploma, which is, secondary education if you want, vocational training, which is fair, but you are playing with words. So basically, I suppose like any English language business owner, what you want is a unicorn. So the perfect blend of attitude, aptitude, and qualifications. So specifically about qualifications, I'm looking for university degree. It shows a capacity for abstract thought and conceptualization. You need to, be able to explain really complex things, or you should be able to. Multilingualism. Um, A, you need to understand the student's predicament. You need to have walked in their shoes. Um, Ideally, either an education degree, rather than an English one, but both are lovely. Or alternatively, Celta, Delta, Digital, something that shows that you have invested your time and your resources into training. Those flimsy 120 online hours to solve degree certificates, for me, is wet paper. And finally, I know that this is controversial, but an English language certificate, or the willingness to sit it. Particularly in the case of native speakers, non-native speakers, normally they already have it. But some qualifications nowadays are performative. For example, at the local university here, students who finish their bachelor's degree in English, they are automatically awarded a C2 level. And well, they know a lot, far more than me, about Kenninga or Tennyson poetry for sure, but can they actually hold a conversation to a C2 level standard? Well, that's to be discussed. So, and in the case of on native speakers in particular, I think that it is important that they sit the exams. They are going to be teaching exams. They should know what they have to do and be through it and show lead with example, basically.
Absolutely. And before starting the live, we were just talking about the high standards and expectations that are set for different categories, right? We often, when we speak about native speakerism or non-native speakers versus native speakers, it's always seen as a dichotomy. And it's always seen like, why are you still judging, or why are you still bringing this topic up? But as we're going to talk about it today, there is no fair compensation. The dichotomy is always brought up to us when we are not being treated fairly as the rest of the category, which, yes, I agree, it shouldn't be so divided. But the fact of the matter is that it is still, and it's continuing to be so. So we always have to look at the current situation and act accordingly and try to disprove this type of myths. When you're talking about the sitting the exam, so many, I often share on my social media the people who say, like, what am I supposed to do? I'm a near native level speaker, but near native is not attested on any certification. So when people self-proclaim their level as being that, we know for a fact that they have not sat an exam, they have not gone through the motions that non-native speakers are deliberately asked, and they have to pay good money to sit them. Which brings me to that question of, do you feel the pressure from parents, students, or the market to equate sort of, do they still look at, oh, C2 level means that I am like a native speaker? Do you see that in your daily, let's say, operation?
Many parents are not that aware about the levels of the European framework. So they just ask for native speakers. Period.
And how do you respond to this expectation?
Well, to be honest, I am too old and grumpy to give them a reasoning explanation, basically because now our attention span is shorter as well, so they wouldn't listen. So I would go for the shock factor in 3 different ways. I know that perhaps it's not, I don't know, very, very morally decent, but okay, I have to hold their attention for 15 seconds maybe. So first is a shock factor. I tell them, you wouldn't want X, just name of any daft Spanish or whatever the nationality celebrity, to teach your children their own language, and they are native speakers. So a passport does not define qualification. Secondly, I know that this is sort of a shady area, but I go to the authority fallacy. I am not native, never had any family roots. I'm not of any native descent, and yet I am an examiner by 2 important examination boards, and they pay me good money to assess their candidates' level of English. So, do you think they are wrong to have hired me? And last, just appealing to reason sometimes. Okay, we are qualified. Our team is qualified. We are passionate. If we have reached this level, that shows that your child can do it too.
And it's so important to say that that's not a level you can actually ever achieve. It's just such a concept, this idealistic, view of becoming one. And I often say to follow up on yours is that all native speakers are not the same level of English, even amongst them. So when you say you are a near native speaker, who are you exactly comparing yourself to? Or name a native speaker that you'd say, okay, this is the level. So it's very funny, but it's also sad because we see it on job ads, and so even people who should be aware of it. And this is another thing we were talking about, is that everyone and their uncle is talking about proficiency and levels and their desires, and I wanted to ask Edita instead, in the more of the corporate world, when companies decide to hire a business English trainer, what actually carries most weight in that case? Do they look for a kind of a proficiency level? What are the kind of a measuring standards and criteria?
Well, I've exited the world of working for others for now because the standards were not very clear. And when they were made clear, they were often very clearly unfair. And when you asked me that first question, Fernando mentioned experience and aptitude, all of those things that are not easily measurable, but you would expect in a job ad to have the measurable ones, to have that request for a certain degree, maybe a CELTA, maybe a Delta, maybe a C2 certificate and things like that. But that's not something that we frequently see. What we do see is near native, or resident of countries A, B, C, D. We know which they are. And it was always difficult for me to pair what they've written and the reality that I was told as a student of languages, and the reality of what our students need us to know and be able to show in the classroom. So what they normally look at job interviews is what you sound like and who you represent in their eyes, and that's normally a certain accent. And I would say, even if that's not attainable, if their market is too narrow to get whatever the unicorn they are looking for, then they ask you where you lived, what was your proximity to the native speakers, because maybe something rubbed off, so you can take that into the classroom. And that's double ridiculous for me when we come to the business aspect of things, because I'm supposed to not just rub off the language knowledge, but also all of those soft skills and everything that they ask me to train, and that they often put in the ads, because they want you to be proficient and to know what for example, a corporate culture looks like.
Absolutely. No, that's a very clear depiction of it, honestly. Neil Harris says, I'm troubled by the idea that a degree and a multilingual background are necessary as an entry ticket to being a teacher if they are used as gatekeeping activity. In terms of inclusion, isn't the skill set which a university education provides a fairer way to assess teachers for courses, such as general English? In the UK, the requirement of having a first degree is being removed from accredited schools and is replaced with the transferable skill which university education confers. Who would like to agree, disagree, or comment on? Neil, thank you for joining us, Neil.
I would like to say, well, for example, we have to distinguish, to draw a clear line between what it is formal education and non-formal education, or free education, if you want. In my case, as the owner of private language school, I have a lot of freedom to hire. But in a I don't know, state school, for example, for primary education in Spain, you have to be the holder of a primary education degree. Do you have studied English? No, you cannot be an English teacher in a primary school. You have to get that particular degree. And I think that sometimes I agree with him in the sense that tertiary education is a good sign that this person has skills that could be suitable for the job. But he mentions it as gatekeeping. Well, I think that multilingualism shows that you have an interest in languages to begin with. Secondly, that you can relate more to other students. And let's talk about the elephant in the room, that you can deal in L1 with your students. That for many years there was, I don't know, something terrible to do. Oh, no, never used L1 in the classroom. But it makes you relate to the students. It makes you bridge the gap between them. And sometimes it sorts out an awful lot of preparatory explanations when you want an activity done. So I think that I understand his concern, but I think that you would also like a doctor to have a degree in medicine, wouldn't you? So a certain level of education is required, and we are dealing with young minds. It's really important.
I want to add to that because we will be doing a panel discussion on the standardization and like the standards expected, like in anything related to English language teaching. Everyone looks at what university you've got your education in. So it's not enough to have any, you can have a master's degree. And I'm speaking from personal experience. I didn't qualify myself when we started, but I hold a bachelor's degree in communication studies. I hold a master's degree in languages, culture, and communication studies. I've done all my work, but I've done the CELTA. I have a Delta. I have a C2 level across all skills. I have done an IELTS, and still when I applied to get a qualified teacher status through England, I had to sit a GCSE. So, it's not about your knowledge or competence. It's about, I sometimes think it's all about the economy of asking people to sit and pay for exams, and that seems to be asked more and more of people who have their education is at a very high level, at a level 7 in the European framework or in the global framework, but they're still being put down and getting things that are level 4 or level 5, and really they are tone deaf to what the person in front of them has already achieved just because they come from so and so, or maybe they're from this nation, or they have, and this thing that I think Edita was saying before, they want to see if you've lived in a context of a monolingual English setting. And in a lot of job descriptions, they look for people who have at least had in the past 5 years, in the recent 5, lived in an English-speaking country. What kind of a criteria is that, right? Because speaking of English as a global language, I could be speaking. I always say about myself, I've only lived in an English-speaking country for 4 years of my life, 3 of which were in Malaysia, which is not considered an English-speaking country. So how does that even constitute the level of English? How can that prove the level of English I am today? I've achieved the level of English through hard work and studies, but no one seems to be looking at that. So it's just a checkbox. Have you paid? Specifically. And
I would like to add something from my country's perspective. I come from Croatia, and in Croatia, to teach English at a primary school, a high school, or anywhere, you need to have a 5-year degree and then a 1-year specialized license where you've done your work in a school and you've come in front of a committee and proven that actually that theoretical knowledge of 5 years has translated into classroom practice. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because we have, again, UK mentioned as a standard. And what we're talking about here are standards, and they're double and triple standards in our industry, and they're not clear. And nobody here is trying to gatekeep or keep native speakers out of the industry. On the contrary, we can always talk about, different paths to the same goal. And if somebody has the passion to do something, they should be able to prove it in some way, because we've been proving it for years and we have gone through these loopholes and done our work, and there are others who haven't had to. And this is what worries us, and it worries us for our students as well, because we've all had these situations where we've had colleagues who are not qualified, who are not there because they like teaching, who are not there because they care about our students. They're there because somebody told them, this is an easy thing to do while you're traveling. And that hurts everyone involved, everyone.
Absolutely. Would you like to add anything, Fernando?
I totally agree with Edita. I think that because I mean, we're talking about education, but we're talking about an industry that, I mean, is huge in terms of economics. And I think that sometimes marketing has a really strong influence. And for many years, there was marketing playing through post-colonialism. I mean, there is the inner circle, and they are white, and they are WASP, possibly, and they are the only way through to learn English. And then nowadays you have a different thing coming out, which is particularly native speakers that, okay, I'm already speaking the language. This can be that hard. And what is my marketing method? First, let's dilute what teaching means. So they use, and I would say abuse, the word coach, that it is a really important and serious profession, but sometimes they just abuse the term. And they sell the, you have been lied to. No, all your primary education, your secondary education, anything you have done is just wrong. Now, my method really works. And
Worthless, right?
yes, and this belief in magic, it is also hurting teachers, but also students that spend money and time. They invest their resources to no avail.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And it feeds into the marketing tactics that are being used both by, private coaches, or even you're saying coaches is a term that's abused. Teacher is a very abused term as well, unfortunately, because everyone is defining themselves as long as they have, and going back to the titles and the entry level kind of thing, as long as they have had an education in the UK or in the US, then anything that they have studied, like without doubt, that's like proof of I can actually teach English because I've studied economics. I've studied no, that's a different profession altogether. But that's what we also see on job ads when they say minimum requirement, a degree from right the UK, or a degree in any subject matter, and they put that and they highlight that, which also again exposes our English language teaching industry as the semi-professional industry as it is. I see a LinkedIn user saying a little late to join. Good to see you all. Your setting is set on private probably, so we don't know who you are. I will find out going through LinkedIn and say hello back to you. Speaking of, like I have a C2 level across all skills, right? I don't feel like I am a C2 level because my expectation in my mind and knowing exactly what that constitutes, we're forever language learners. And it's not my imposter syndrome talking. It's just me knowing as an English language teacher that on a good day, I might be this and that on certain skills. And on a different day, I might be not as good as. As an examiner, Fernando, do you think that often these levels of C2 are misunderstood? And also, we were again talking about imposter syndrome. How is it that I can have this attested and feel that on a good day, maybe I still don't feel worthy, as if, yeah, but I know I can control myself, the monkey in my head, right? Whereas other people who do not have this can attest to their experience and culture, the air that they have breathed being the only and the sole reason they are better than everyone else.
Well, I would say that perhaps it's a bit out of my reach, but I would say that in general, you have two kinds of people. You have people who live with a permanent imposter syndrome. Normally, they are perfectionists, they are meticulous, they are thorough workers, they are actually good, but they don't see themselves in such a good light. And then you have the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is, hey, I'm good at what I'm doing. And they don't see I mean, they have a very limited scope. I do agree with you that when assessing, for example, in this particular case, speaking, I think that it is very important to consider that, okay, this is just a snapshot, still in time. It's just a performance in a particular moment, in a particular setting, which is sometimes quite awkward because, for example, in Cambridge, you are with another candidate you may not have known before, talking about topics that perhaps you don't have a particular genuine interest in. So there are different situations to consider. But I think that certification has two parts. Having the level and being familiar with the format, just to perform the motions, to know what to do and how to do it to be the most effective. And I think that when you pass the exam, some students just have this feeling that, well, but I am not really that good. And I always make the comparison with your driving test. They will never ask you in life whether you have failed one or two theoretical questions in your theoretical exam. They will ask you whether you have the driving license or not. And so we have to try to believe in ourselves a bit more. And in particular, when we're talking about English, I hope that Edith agrees with me. It's about communication. So if you can understand and be understood, if you can carry your message across and understand the nuances of other people's messages, you are doing it.
Absolutely. It's not some sort of a unicorn thing that once you have it, you suddenly all gates are open. It's not the magic scroll that reveals all the mysteries and suddenly you are a guru or a thing of, no, it doesn't happen that way. But unfortunately, they are misused. And I'm thinking about the fact that until I was 23, 24, I was never asked to show any certification for my English. All I had to do was speak it. And it was enough for people to say, "Oh, we want to hire you." I was like, "I'm not a teacher." "Oh, but you can speak." I don't have any, titles to I don't have any certificate, but it was okay. So it's very almost funny to me to see how examinations are all, you start at 4 basically, and you can keep doing examinations until you're 70, 80. You can still find ways to spend your money in saying, you are this level and that level, and the cat and the pat and the flyers and the movers and the thing. And it's a global industry, and people, like you were saying, it's very performative. Oh, I've reached this level. Oh, really? And then they cannot hold a conversation, and but no one criticizes that. Strangely, people criticize the primary school teacher who was not a native speaker, who managed to cause all the damage in the world, and therefore people in their late 40s are not able to communicate in English. However, all these certifications, which are supposedly attesting a specific level, do not match the reality of the fact. Yeah. Oftentimes it is a performative task which may be carried out well, but then it doesn't reflect the reality. And so a lot of I don't know if you've had private language students or people that join your school that are B1 level, suppose here is my certificate, and you realize that.
Of course. I mean, to begin with, we have to consider that, just the European framework. We are talking about bands. So a B1, it is a band that fluctuates between A2 and B2. And obviously, a certification exam could be on the lower side of the band or on the higher one. And there are differences there. And for example, talking about my private students, sometimes in terms of time, student is really pressed for time, I suggest a particular certification because I think it's more accessible for them considering the level that they currently have. And another thing to take into consideration is that good certifications cover the 4 skills, and therefore most of them actually have a balance, so you can perhaps not perform to the best of your ability in one of the skills, and because the other skills are good enough, still get a pass. So this is something that we have to take into consideration as well. Now, I would say that, and I'm not defending the big corporations that actually manage the accreditation system, but I would say that this is a bit like democracy. In Churchill's words, he used to say that it was a terrible system, with the exception of all the rest. So at least I'm thankful that the European framework of reference exists, because before that, oh, my child is I don't know, grade 3, my sister is pet, and it was a mess. Now we have a clear system with excellence that actually allows you to guide people, but obviously it's not a perfect system, like anything human ever is, I would say.
Mm. Alexander Popovsky says the Dunning-Kruger effect is quite dominant among ELT people whose first language is English, especially those who don't even have a teaching qualification. I followed Alexander Popovsky's live talk last year, or was it last year? Yes. And, she was the one defining it as semi-profession and giving the reasons why it is seen as it is. Things are the way they are because there is no regulating body to accreditate or to say who in fact is who. And that's why we have everyone kind of self-proclaiming themselves as coaches, trainers, teachers, and then it's a big mess in the middle. And then we also have the social media phenomenon, right? So that's another thing altogether. I wanted to read this comment by Slavenka, who says, I'm sure you can read all of it. It says, very interesting topic indeed. I originally came from Croatia and have now lived in England for 30 years. I've run my own language school for 20 years in Bath, UK. I employ teachers according to British Council guidelines as we are accredited. My own difficulty comes from being an owner, manager of a school in England, and agencies we promote our courses to would question who our teachers are, knowing that I am not a native speaker just from my name, which I find is amazing. Me too. I am also a linguist, teacher, translator, interpreter, speak several languages, qualified at Filozofski Fakultet in Croatia. Just thought I would share. Yes, exactly. This is what we're talking about, Slavenka, about people who are, it's irrelevant what you have done and what you have achieved, just because, you're a foreigner, according to a colonialist view of, who can be an English language teacher. And it's draining to keep proving yourself and saying, I can have a say in the matter, even though, and it sounds like you're already justifying, because no one is speaking to you like a professional. They're always questioning you, and that has a very draining effect. As we were saying again with Fernando in the 5 minutes before the live, it's the system that inflicts upon us this belief that we're not good enough. Because if every conversation starts with, but where are you from? But where did you get? Did you speak in? Oh, your English is so good. Is your husband? It really has a negative effect, and it takes a toll on every English language teaching professional globally.
And it is structural on so many levels. For example, just a personal situation I had with adult student of mine, lovely person, happened to be Spanish literature teacher in a high school, and well, basically, she came to classes for sort of revenge. She didn't pass in the School of Languages. She didn't like the teacher she had, and she said, no, I want my certificate. I want to prepare to pass. So and she one day mentioned that she was friends with the head of the English department in her high school, and she asked her, so where are you going? Who are you having classes with? And she mentioned me, and she was apparently horrified. Oh, but is he Spanish? I would never. And then my reaction at the moment, because sometimes I am a bit too unfiltered, I'm afraid, part of my charm, perhaps. I just replied, well, is she quitting her job? Is she resigning? Because if passport does not allow me to teach you private lessons, she shouldn't be holding her post as an English teacher in secondary school. My student went silent because it was a sort of an awkward situation. I said, no, just ask her. And we moved on. So this is one thing. And then, for example, in Spain, you have auxiliares de conversación, which is the craziest thing ever. Crazy, on so many levels. But before Brexit, it was mostly British people. So I was just, no, they are just the heralds of the culture, whatever that is. And later, post Brexit, they are going mostly hiring people from Philippines, from India, which I think is a nice change because it offers different perspectives, the different accents, more multiculturalism. But the funny thing about that is that they sold it to the parents and to the system, saying, no, teachers are not doing their job. So we need somebody from outside with no qualifications, just a university degree, wanted to have some fun time in Europe, which is fair enough. I understand. You are 20, you are young, you want to have fun. Do you think that most of these people are actually, committed to their classes and to their students? They don't even know their names to begin with. And then the system, why is the system having them in? Because it costs money. Well, to begin with, they in Spain, they don't pay for their social insurance.
Convenient.
Right? So very convenient. The administration sets rules that does not apply to itself. And well, the myth, but they are I hate the concept of they are cultural ambassadors. Well, I mean, why does the child have to know about, I don't know, Guy Fawkes Night? I mean, British people don't celebrate it any longer because they're still having tummy aches from Halloween the previous week, right? And well, celebrating courting a Catholic person who tried out to blow out the Houses of Parliament perhaps is not, something that people would look with good eyes. I could be cancelled if I tried to set up such a celebration nowadays.
I will be cancelled is the right phrasing of it, because we would be considering that, we're under very close observation in case we do get anything wrong. Some lovely comments are coming in also by Courtney Bailey. She says, pedagogy is so important. It's maddening that a native speaker, so long as they have a bachelor's degree in any field, can obtain a TEFL certificate in as little as 4 weeks and easily secure employment in most parts of the world, and then be referred to as an expert and the ideal candidate in this field. It's a disservice to our students and unfair to non-natives who must perpetually prove linguistic proficiency on top of competence in pedagogy. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, Courtney, for this very great contribution. I wanted to add another thing. We often talk about defeating systemic bias, and this, what Fernando was just saying, is exactly a clear example of this, right? I am based in Italy, the Italian government promotes this. They want to have a conversational, person from the UK specifically. That's the best. And people who normally contact language schools, they want their teacher to be of so and so nationality. They're looking for the right kind of accent. But this is also in the public system where this is encouraged. And so alongside a formal teacher who has a pedagogy, who has the years of study, who has done everything, there's a conversation teacher or helper who is basically seen as the holy grail, because they are the ones who can model the pronunciation in the right way. And I often, I did this talk 3 years back when I just, exposed this system, and I said, what is the effect on the actual class teacher when they have to be helped by a teenager, a backpacker, someone that comes for a year of studies, and all the glory and all the perks and everyone's joy is to see that they can interact with a mother tongue speaker, as though there aren't any people around us we can interact with in English. So going back to why do we feel this way and why do we have imposter? Because, well, systematically, this is what is consistently being done to us. I want to, because I'm looking at our time constraints, I want to also address the part of compensation. And if Adita can help us speak about that a bit more, many highly qualified teachers underprice themselves. One effect of it we saw is obviously because of imposter syndrome. We don't think we're good enough, but also in other contexts where what practical advice would you give to teachers who struggle to align their fees with their expertise? They always think, okay, I'm not an agent, I'm going to, 10 euro, 12 euro, and they sell their expertise or their freelance work for pennies, cents.
Well, one, to look around and perhaps compare also, not just with other prices around, to see what the market is like, and it's a complete and utter mess, but to compare themselves to themselves in the past. I think that's a very useful piece of advice. Like, where have you gone? What have you done to get there? And what have you gone through to be able to say, okay, I am now a business owner and I'm offering my services to the market? Because I think, that's where the perfectionism comes in. But I think what's important is to look at the industry communally as well. We are setting the standards. That's why we're talking about this today. I think we all together need to band to prove the importance of our industry, because we are here in our classrooms seeing the lives of our students changing for the better. And in business English, you can be, negotiating $1 million deals when it comes to children learning languages, making friends forever, creating opportunities for themselves in this global world. And this is what we are helping happen. This is what we are facilitating. So we need to think about the results of our work. And we do need to think about these industry standards and how we fit in into all of that. Because if we raise ourselves above this kind of hobbyist approach, which, we haven't talked about this. You mentioned this because I'm not in the Spanish or Italian context, so I've never seen this happen where somebody from the street comes to help you in the classroom. But what about student safeguarding? That's also something that we need to think about, and we need to think about it in the sense of skills and what we provide. And this is where the value can be measured in a way, and it can be. You can ask your students what you enable them to do and what value this holds, so that you can think a bit better about the pricing of your services, but also about how we protect them from people who might down the line cause them not to speak English ever again. And I've had these students who've been harassed, who've been told that they'll never learn, that they don't have this ability in them, because somebody in the classroom was not doing a proper job, was just talking to the air, helping their ego grow, but not thinking about the safety or the benefit of their students. So when you think about your worth and your value, think about what you're bringing, and think about also what you're not doing, and how you differ from people who are really abusing the name of this industry.
Where do we see the biggest gap between actual teaching competence and fair compensation? Do we actually, in my setting, I don't see that happen. I don't see that having the degrees, having the qualifications equate to higher pay. I don't see that personally. Do you see it anywhere?
That's quite difficult, because teaching is kind of sort of flat level field, in the sense that you don't hold a position and then immediately after some years expertise move on to a higher level necessarily. You keep on teaching if this is what you want to do. In my case, for example, when it comes to retribution, it has to do more with the time they have been working with us rather than qualification. Qualification is assessed at the very beginning, trying to get the right fit to join us. And then the longest you've been working with us, doing properly your job, as Aditya mentioned, that doing it properly, being professional, safeguarding the children, and be professional with all students, then it gets rewarded, because obviously you have more expertise, you are more familiar with the format, you know what to do. But I would say that in my case particularly, we don't reward a particular degree or a particular certification.
Edita, in your context?
It's quite tricky to talk about the business English industry, because the compensation is being hidden. And I've heard from my colleagues a lot that the native status is being awarded with bigger compensation, while you can get credentials while you're teaching for a company and nobody will reward this investment of your time or effort or your own funds. So I can say that from what I've heard anecdotally. What I can say again, if I go back to my original context in Croatia, if you're trying to teach for a state school, then every time you get a higher qualification, your pay does go up. So for me, why I'm mentioning this, because going outside of Croatia was a shock for me, because you can see how these, well, in the private sector and in different countries, how the idea of how you should be compensated is, I don't know, ill-defined, not defined at all, non-existent. So it's really the Wild West. Everyone can do whatever they want, and there is no clear translation of what you invested into what you're going to get. For
and sometimes they word it. I've seen things on LinkedIn when they and I've seen it also on job ads when it's like competitive salary, competitive to whom? You know what? Say how much is it? You know, and so the idea that you would self-imply that that is a competitive salary is just absurd. And yeah, there's a lot of like hush hush. People don't really want to speak about it. Also because probably it's like opening a can of worms, because so many things would come up as, you know, the biases, the favoritisms, the the people that you know who are getting the promoted and those who are not necessarily because they can do a job well. I want to conclude because I don't want to go over time, and probably we'll have this discussion maybe in our private community with Don when he does join us. I'm guessing it was a very short notice for him, so granted, he might have gotten the time wrong. But I wanted to answer this last question that Neil asks us, and he's saying, can I ask if the panel has an idea for credentials and competency-based framework which would level the playing field to reduce or remove this systemic racism, which privileges the native speaker and which celebrates the kind of teacher we have discussed today and suggests how this can be implemented?
I don't have a solution, but I have a couple of ideas. As a language owner, okay, don't ask for native speakers. Ask for qualified teachers. Period. It's as simple as that. Don't blame the market. Don't blame the parents that they are asking for something. Oh no, but they want an American teacher. Who cares? They want to speak English. That's the point. You want a good professional who is passionate about the profession. And on the part of the native speakers themselves, okay, this is like, allow me to say this, perhaps it's not very politically correct, but okay, you want to help feminism. Listen. First of all, shut up and listen. And second, do the motions, sit the exams. Do you want no? But how can I tell that I am ready for the job if I don't say that I'm a native speaker? Well, first of all, sit language certificate exam, then do a training. Train properly. Don't do just an online course that it is actually 4 hours. Don't go for micro credentials, or go that way, but then add them up, so that it is meaningful.
The same certifications and qualifications that are available to the rest of the world are available to native speakers. Can we summarize this way? So the fact that, Anil, I have nothing against your question. I think it's a nice question that you're asking. But if we have to ask the question, like, what can we do to stop racism, which privileges native speakers? Simply take the requirement for native speakers out. And that still won't help because people can still do their discrimination on the inner side and not just proclaim it and show it to the rest of the world. They can still be biased. They can still be racist. But the fact of the matter is that because it is so blatantly in our face kind of racism and discrimination, that worries me that it will take another 200, 300 years until we actually have, as the Italians call it, politica trasparente, that everything is so transparent and clear and obvious. We're still fighting for the minimum really here. We're just saying, don't put your preference of nationality on a job ad. We're at that stage, and it just shows you how the work we have to do needs to be really persistent and ongoing, and we need to really battle this out until we see change. Because if we are not making ourselves be respected in these kind of settings and publicly we are being shamed so much that already parents, people who have nothing a say in education, are now having a certain preference based on the erroneous, bad marketing messages that have been perpetuated for so long. We need to undo that. We need to undo that first. They are thinking that because we have made it, but marketing teams, as Fernando was saying earlier, they have made it so everyone thinks they know what constitutes being a good teacher, and it has nothing to do with education. It has nothing to do with expertise. It has nothing to do with the studies that a single person has made. And it has everything to do, unfortunately, about where they have lived, where they were born, what passport they hold, and what university they went to in terms of location. Could be the worst place. And sometimes not even that. It goes down to high school level diplomas. And they compare this to people who are, experts at what they do. And they still get paid less than the so-called native speaker. I didn't want to use that phrasing, someone who is unqualified to do the job. Let's put it this way, yeah? Because there are plenty of native speakers, as we know it, who do have the credentials, who can do an excellent work. That's why we can be against the dichotomy ourselves. But first, let's take a step back and generally examine the situation so that we can pinpoint where we can operate immediately as of today to make a relevant difference and a relevant change. Um, in terms of compensation, I think we are all victims of race to the bottom. I know teenage teachers who feel forced into accepting 15 euro per hour because that has become a market rate on Preply and other platforms, which also expect new tutors to teach for free to gain traction on their platform. I will not get out of bed for that rate and encourage all teachers to try to wrestle back control by sticking to rates which match their skills. For transparency, I will not teach for less than 50 euro per hour, but I balance this by volunteering for some charities working with refugee and asylum seekers. But totally okay for you to define your own rates, yes. The thing I want to comment on is, yes, no respectful teacher would ever go on Preply and and say, like, even in a starting point of your career, you can still do better than that. But the fact of the matter is, this is available, and making it a mass consumption kind of thing, like Duolingo, like all these other apps, they're going to, it's a trending thing, but which has already been scientifically proven that it doesn't last. So people can do well, and again, people can learn English just by watching YouTube videos at the same time. So it's not the amount of money that is invested, but when the money is invested, it should be with a professional and not towards things that are just, trendy and unprofessionally delivered, in my opinion. Would you like to add anything to also Neil's comment about these very hyped up apps and ways now, chat GPTs, all these applications that you can basically have a conversation with, not feel judged, etc., etc. I know what Edita would like to say about this. This is what I want to say about it. So I'm going to make you talk, Edita, about it. What do you think of these apps and ways of learning? Do you think they model the right way of speaking English better than any non-native teacher?
Of course they don't. I mean, we don't have the time to talk about the kind of modeling we're seeing here, and the way these apps are being used, again, is removing safeguarding. And I would like to kind of say that again, because we are here because we love our students and because we want them to do better and to have better opportunities in life. And if we allow companies that scrape our data or that find in their advertising that native or €5 per hour, and I've seen less than 15, yes. If that's going to be the standard, then we might as well just pull the plug out and just go gardening and ignore the whole situation, because this is not what we want to see. Absolutely. When it comes to self-learning, yes, this has always been the case. You can learn nuclear physics from YouTube and some books, of course. That's not what people are paying for a transfer of knowledge from head to head. They're paying for pedagogy. They're paying for people who understand the psychology and the sociology of learning and who understand their subject matter. And when it comes to AI, which opens up a whole other can of worms, it reflects our biases towards us. So what we see in people who are, again, are not being sufficiently supported and trained in using this AI technology in their classrooms, which is, again, a whole other issue. We see these biases reflected. We see the native speaker norm. We see, if you ask ChatGPT for 10 pieces of advice on how to learn a language, the word native is going to come up somewhere. And it's going to be biased towards a certain standard as well, which has long not been the standard in global English. So that's another discussion to have, but it's definitely something to think about. We need to push back on what's seen as the standard as experts, because we should know better and we do know better.
Fernando?
I totally agree with what Edita says. I would just add that, I mean, talking about talking to parents directly, addressing them, and to people that want to learn English. One thing is that exposure is great. So the more exposure you get, the better. That said, there is a different thing between, I mean, there is one thing that is called teaching, that is just guiding you towards the best way to get your goals. So a person that understands you, what your needs are, and has been there and knows how best to help you along the way. Another thing is just apps like Duolingo or whatever. It can be fun, can contribute towards exposure, but this is not teaching. You are talking about Preply, Italki, where you connect for 25 minutes with somebody new every time. Well, they are just casual, random conversations. If you can call them conversations, they are just very short exchanges. This is not teaching. Does it count as exposure? Maybe, but maybe not the right kind of exposure that you should get, right? So I would say that okay, it's like paying a subscription for the gym. That's not gonna make you fit. You have to go and train, and you have to follow a diet, right? You should ask for advice to a professional. Seek out the professionals. There are a lot of out there, and just look at the qualifications. Look at the history record. I mean, in academies, do the students pass? Talking about personal trainees, word of mouth reference. Do a little bit of investigation, not just get the sparkly thing that you see in a reel in Instagram.
Yes. And I disagree with our students expect to be able to get great teachers at such low rates. No one in this world associates cheap pricing with great. I don't think our students are that stupid to think that they're paying for something, they're paying 10 euro for a lesson and that's going to be better than actually. No, I don't think it. I think that as you were saying, Neil, if you're charging 50 euro, I would, if I were a student and not knowing anything, I say, oh, that must be a great teacher if that's how much he's charged. That must be a person who is well qualified, or that must. So I'm immediately associating the price, that is higher to more formed trainer. So I don't think that is the case. I don't think students, and whether or not, we do get this kind of pushback from parents, from learners, from saying, I know, but I do, but I expect. So as educators, we need to educate the uneducated, and we need to continuously repeat ourselves, even, till their ears bleed, that does not constitute a professional setting. That's not a professional. They need to be reminded of that. But like I said, the amount of noise that they're hearing about this being the way, this being the right way, and native speaker, this myth, they end up thinking that that's to be true until they hear otherwise. And like we gave a lot of examples with just a few small conversations, that system can shift. It is possible. It's not something we cannot do. But this being, I had this question for Dawn, and I wanted to close with this: how do vague or inconsistent professional standards create space for exploitation, particularly in our diverse settings? Like, we are not, obviously, we cannot cover the entire world, but we do have some experience, and we come from different countries, and we are based in different places. How does this create the space for exploitation of teachers? Doesn't it? If we are so vague with our credentials, there is no one regulating what we can say and do, and we justify everything with student preference and students' thoughts and parents' expectations. And who is regulating? The awarding bodies are not parents. They are not our students. Okay? And unfortunately, they are not the awarding bodies either, because they're doing a very bad job at telling or accrediting those who are actually worthy and doing the right thing. I'm not going to cite them all. I don't want to be banned for life from any social media platform. And
come on, you need to.
Anita says, I am only intense. I haven't written anything or said anything. But it is the truth. It is the truth, because everything is very vague. And God forbid, people, I should be an inspector. Don't you think I'd be a great inspector?
Oh, yeah. I'd be terrified.
No one is hiring great inspectors either.
You would be feared.
Anyway, It was a pleasure speaking to you. We have gone over the hour. Any closing statements and arguments you'd like to make? Do so now. Fernando.
I would say that change is possible. We just need to take responsibility within our limited sphere. I mean, we cannot change the world, but we can change our surroundings, leading by example. And sometimes saying no, that I don't know if it feels the same way I do. Sometimes saying no is very difficult to a potential customer, to a parent, to a corporate setting. But sometimes just setting your standards, it is teaching in itself. And sometimes people go, and sometimes people return, and sometimes people go for good, but they were not your students, they were not your target to begin with. So I think that just trying to control what you have near you, and that would help, because you are leading by example, and other people would see that that's possible. I would like to think that my students, one thing that they take from our classes is that, okay, it is possible to communicate in English and to be fluent and understand and be understood. That's the important thing.
Absolutely. I agree with all of that. Change is possible. We should be optimistic. We're not here just to say, oh, the industry is in a bad shape or our profession is not being appreciated enough. Somebody said in the comment, we should call it a profession, not an industry. I would argue it's both. This industry part is the one that is less regulated, and it kind of translates into our profession. There's a play there. But it's also a vocation, and it's something that has been used against us, because if you love teaching, it's not about the money, right? So Neil mentioned volunteering. If you feel that calling, you should do it, but then appreciate the part of your work that's being compensated. And I would like to especially talk to the audience that comes from countries where 15 euros is worth a lot. And they might think, oh, but I can't charge the same as somebody, I don't know, in Spain or in the UK, even though I have the credentials. And that's what people hear a lot. And I would invite them to think about the service that they're offering, especially globally, and to award themselves with the self-confidence that they deserve, and to raise their prices, because we need you. The students need you. And this lack of self-confidence and this constant self-criticism and perfectionism is not real, and it should be combated.
Well said. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you to all those who commented today. Let's stop at that on that note. I'd like to invite you, if you want to have this kind, we'll have 4 total panel discussions this year. This was the first one, and these are publicly available. It's a way to kind of invite you in our private community, where we will be doing other sessions with Alexandra Popovsky was here recently. I don't know if she's still watching, but she's going to be one of the trainers. Samantha Reeve, John Villa, he's going to talk about AI bias as well. So we're going to talk about all these really intricate, important topics, and we're going to dive deep, just like we did today, with everyone opening their mics or videos and contributing to this, because this is what we want to do. We have an overload of information. We want implementation. We want to talk to actual people and see where they're at, and try to find solutions to these wider problems of our profession. I'm going to steal Alexandra Popovsky's idea of not describing it as an industry, which unfortunately it's how people mostly refer to it, but consider it more a profession. So thank you again, and hopefully you'll join us in the next sessions. Bye-bye, everyone.